I guess we're live.
It's the MLS Is Back finale edition of Waking the Red Weekly presented by Footy Talks. Toronto FC have been eliminated in the round of 16 after a 3-1 loss to NYCFC and now head home with plenty of questions to answer. We'll raise some of those questions certainly on today's show. Joshua Kloke of The Athletic will be by a little bit later as well to help us answer some of those. But first, as always, my name's Mitchell Tierney and joined by Michael Singh as always this week. Michael, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great, Mitch. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Not so bad. Not exactly loving the kit you're wearing this week, considering what happened over the weekend to my poor old Leicester City. But, at least Jamie Vardy, oldest player to ever win the EPL Golden Boot. So we have that going for us, and we won't talk about anything else related to that. And Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm good. I was going to wear my training kit since we experienced a training match, but I didn't feel like putting in the effort, which kind of mirrors the TFC that we saw. So I'm wearing black because I'm in mourning.
I see that. Yeah, certainly a sentiment I think felt throughout Toronto FC verse right now. There's not a lot of positivity going on after again. I think a lot of people would have. But if Toronto FC went out to New York City FC, even if they didn't show it necessarily at this tournament, a very good side. But the way things transpired in that match, a lot to be concerned about. Michael, I guess we'll start with you for just general thoughts on the loss to New York. And you had a pretty good column about, what went wrong specifically to that match.
Yeah, where do I start, Mitch? Jeez. Let's start right at the beginning then. Let's talk about that opening starting 11 roster. Sorry, 1 second here. Awesome. So Greg Vanney obviously went with a youngster there in Jayden Nelson, who made his first MLS appearance, his first real senior professional appearance, really, at the round of 16 there. And great to see him do that. I mean, you guys know this more than anyone. I'm pumped to see Jayden Nelson make a start. But did it really, really, really have to be in the round of 16 winner-go-home tie against New York City FC? I mean, if he's really that good, and if Greg Vanney believed in him that much to make a difference, why not play him for at least 10 minutes in the first 3 matches of the tournament to at least see what he can do, get his feet under him at least? Not save him until the round of 16 like he's some sort of secret weapon and put all the pressure on the 17-year-old up-and-coming, Canadian Youth Player of the Year, as if he needed any more pressure. So as Jayden Nelson said after the match, he's relieved to have that one behind him. But that's where the biggest question mark for me is entering the game is we can, we'll get to it later, but we can ask questions about the TFC medical staff. But I think fingers might have to be pointed at Vanney for the way that this match turned out.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to also shout out your article because it's the TFC notebook and 5 things that Michael noticed about the game. He was relatively able to distill our scorching hot post game takes into something a bit more legible and readable, which I very much appreciate. I would give big money to see the whiteboard in the NYCFC dressing room pregame. How much ammunition are we going to give this team? Maybe don't play false 9 paws against the one side that has the most experience with false 9 paws. There's a part of me that thinks that maybe after that last 9 a.m. game, TFC just all got together and said, you know what? Maybe not, because I can't, it's days later and I'm still in disbelief about what we witnessed on Sunday night. It was shades of 2015 versus the Montreal Impact, if I'm being honest.
I wonder if there's a bit of an overreaction to all of this. I mean, again, when you look at this match and the importance that it might hold at the end of the season, now there's so much up in the air, of course. We don't know if the season will be finished. We don't know if there will be playoffs, that sort of thing. And in that light, these games seem incredibly important. But there might be a chance we look back at this as, Toronto FC finished this tournament second in the Eastern Conference, and then everything after that was semi-exhibition games. I know there was a Champions League spot on the line. I know what that means to this fan base, but they'll certainly likely have another opportunity to do that through a Voyageurs Cup that, by all accounts, will be coming later on this year. So I don't know. Just the reaction to this, again, comparing it to a Montreal playoff loss and some of that sort of things. I know it's fresh in the mind and that, but it did seem kind of like, and I wonder even if for the team, the group stage games were the most important part of this, because certainly in the lack of squad rotation, it did seem like they really wanted to get at least something against New England, and then anything thereafter maybe wasn't as important. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Michael.
Yeah, believe it or not, before the tournament, I think everyone was kind of second guessing whether or not it was worth it for Toronto to even be there in the first place. So for them to obviously put in that disappointing performance, there are still some positives to take away from this. As you alluded to there, they're second in the Eastern Conference after, that these 3 games wrapped up. And you mentioned this in one of the articles that you have coming out, Mitch. I think TFC are obviously they're unbeaten in over a calendar year in the regular season, but this is the first time since 2017 that TFC have gone undefeated in their last their first 5 matches to start the season. So there are little positives taken away here. I mean, we saw Pablo Piatti, but he started 4 games. I mean, we thought we weren't going to see that. We thought Pablo Piatti didn't even exist in the tournament. Come on. So it was great to see that he was able to get that run under him, and Michael Bradley as well. He played every minute of the MLS Is Back tournament, which is absolutely ridiculous considering the fact that he came off ankle surgery 4 months ago, and he hasn't played a competitive match in 8 months. So still a little bit of positives take away. Obviously, the end result leaves a sour taste in our mouths. But Jeff, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
I mean, you say positive. I can't help but seeing it as like a loser's lament. Well, our house burnt down, but at least the backyard is, the grass is still there, kind of stuff.
The Carolina Hurricanes are playing spike
oh yeah,
ball
that's
on the
right.
grass right
Yeah,
now.
that's right. They're playing spike ball on my. I mean, I'm gonna bring up the quote from your article, so because it incensed me. This is a quote from Jayden Nelson that you recounted. I feel like I can take away the pressure, said Nelson when asked after the match what some of his takeaways were. When it comes to tournaments like this, I just haven't been in a lot of big tournaments like this, so knowing how to mentally prepare and play and control the game in different types of ways, ellipses, but I feel like it was a good start for me and I'm just ready for the future. I mean, I had to walk around my block a couple times after I read that because when did TFC become like everybody gets a medal participation club in a knockout game? Like, that's just not the kind of response I want to see in a post-game press conference when you just got your butts handed to you by a rival that had that really, really, really wanted to beat you because we've owned them for almost 4 years.
All right, JPM, I'm going to slow your roll there a little bit because Jayden Nelson, I'll defend him here. Jayden Nelson was sitting there in his first ever press conference. Like, this is a 17-year-old kid facing the media really for what is the second time, the first time we spoke to him when he first signed that first homegrown contract. So I don't think Jayden Nelson's been in this position a lot of times where he's supposed to take positives away from such a drubbing, especially in his MLS debut. So I think in that sort of mentality, that sort of sense, we have to cut him sort of a pass there and not giving us the TFC, we want to win everything quote,
Well, I mean, it brings us back to square one. What was he doing there in the first place? Like, let alone the press conference, what was he doing on the field in the first place? Like, you don't. Twice in this tournament, we've had conversations about 2 things that, I mean, if you read any soccer theory textbook, don't switch your center backs. Don't switch both center backs at the same time. And maybe don't give a 17-year-old his debut in a knockout win or go home game. I mean, it feels like I'm taking crazy pills, to be honest.
No, you're not alone in that sentiment. And like you said, I mean, you kind of pointed out Nelson there after the match, but I think this all just falls on Greg Vanney here, and he has to shoulder the blame as the head coach, as the one who is putting Nelson out there. I mean, he has to be the one shouldering the blame here.
Yeah, I have two major issues with what Vanney did in this game, and the first one, again, Jeff alluded to it. Pozuelo at the false 9. We talked throughout this tournament about how good Pozuelo has been at the number 10. Again, the only guy who scored in this game for Toronto FC was Patrick Mullins, and I know they completely switched up things by then, but it was so clear, screaming out the entire game, that they didn't have a strong presence in the middle. I know De Leon, the idea behind this formation is that De Leon rotates into that spot when Pozuelo pulls out wide, but that creates issues elsewhere in the pitch. So, and which we saw in transition, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But that was my main issue. Was first off, we've seen in MLS Cup even how much of a issue not having a number 9 can be for Toronto FC. So why wouldn't you just try Mullins in that spot? So that was my first issue. And the second one was, after the first half, it was incredibly clear that this was an issue. The midfield was an issue, and Greg Vanney didn't do anything about it until he went down 2-0. It's one of my main criticisms I've always had with him as a coach is sometimes he gets a little too set in his plan, and when it's clearly going wrong, he doesn't always shift it. And for those two things, I think were pretty detrimental to Toronto FC in this game, and I think the main reason they lost it.
Yeah, just on your set. Sorry, go Jeff. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, all I was going to say is it's poetic justice that Mullins got the pity goal, because the game was screaming for a number 9, and anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's honestly, that game felt like the type of game that a Patrick Mullins would score in. Just TFC's out of it; they're down 3-0, and why not just add a little bit more sentiment, making Patrick Mullins, who didn't have any minutes in the entire tournament leading up to that match, come in and score a goal. So he was sort of the forgotten striker. So yeah, that is sort of poetic justice there. Mitch, kind of getting back to your initial point there on Greg Vanney. The substitutions, obviously, that you got to be proactive, not reactive in a win or go home match, right? The signs were there from the first half. That game was screaming for a substitution, whether it was Josie, whether it was whether it was Azorio, someone in the middle calm the game down. And then when he didn't do it, kind of got the sense that something was coming for NYCFC. Everyone watching kind of got that sense, but for whatever reason, Greg Vanney, sticking to his guns, decided not to make that substitution. The question that I have to ask now is, you decide all of a sudden that we go down 2-0, now's the time to put on Josie Altidore and Jonathan Osorio. What difference does it make if you're going to make that substitution 5 minutes earlier? Where's that line? You know what I mean? So was it because you went down 2-0, you're making a substitution? You got to see that earlier. Straight up, You have to see that earlier in the match.
Absolutely. I mean, are we going to talk about the medical staff? Because something's rotten. If every player on the team's hamstrings are made of glass, are we recruiting wrong, or are they training wrong? I mean, there needs to be an answer here. There's 700,000 other teams in the MLS, and there'll be 700,000 more next year with expansion. And I don't see this kind of plague of hamstring and leg injuries happening to any of them with the regularity that it's happening to TFC. So where's our
boy Martin Bailey? We need a stat that shows how many injuries, hamstring injuries specifically, TFC has compared to the rest of the league. There has to be some sort of metric measuring this, because TFC has to be up there. I've mentioned this before we started, but I started covering this team in August, and it's got to be at least 4 or 5 times where right before the kickoff, we hear someone else has gone down injured. Just thinking back off the top of my head, like you can think back to Omar Gonzalez right before the MLS Cup playoffs, and we hear that he's just gone. Cool. We hear Subasa Endo, what happened to him last season as well. It's just too many times where TFC is kind of picking up these little muscle injuries in training, and then subsequently, I don't want to say hiding it from media, because they have strategy obviously in their game plan.
Of course, yeah.
But it's not nice to kind of, as a TFC fan, to just wake up to these surprises so often.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I do think the medical staff did, in their defense, have some victories at the tournament. You mentioned it, the ability to get Bradley back in the roster and healthy. And again, Piatti, we talked about him coming back from injury as well. The ability to have some of those guys on the field for as much as they did, that does show, at least in some instances, they were able to work the recovery well and again, have some victories at this tournament. But
Mitch, shouldn't that be the standard?
Yeah, I'm going to take away both of those victories.
You're off for 4 months. Pablo Piatti had a hamstring injury 4 months ago.
Yeah.
You're telling me he shouldn't be able to play 60 minutes each match? Or Michael Bradley, we all know the work that he put in. I don't think we can credit the TFC medical staff for doing
exactly.
that. I mean, they took him 4 months to analyze the injury itself, or
Yep.
3 months to get the injury, what it was itself correct, right? So, I mean, you can praise the TFC medical stuff because they did technically keep him on the field, but I don't know how much of that was them.
Yeah. And let's not forget that Bradley had an absolute howler of a game on Sunday. You know, Omar had a howler of a game on Sunday. Piatti hasn't played 90 minutes since he's come back. So load management or not, what are we celebrating here, right? That our DP can play 60 minutes. Like, that's fantastic, right?
Yeah, I guess that's more than fair enough. Yeah, there's certainly concerns when it comes to that about the club going forward again, especially with some of these important players that we saw missing, and how important it's clear that at least one of the nines and Jonathan Osorio is to this team. Just the lack of balance in that game. Again, if there is a positive, though, I think it does relate to the fact that Ayo Akinola can step in clearly and be a second number 9, because it's so clear how much this team needs a strong presence up front. And now they do have two of them. Of course, neither of them were available to start that match against New York City. So it comes back to the same, same thing. If how valuable are they if they aren't there? But at least Toronto FC does now have further options at that position. One other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is a concern, I think, going forward, a major concern, and that was kind of what we saw teams do to Toronto FC in this tournament, and that's the high press, and specifically sitting on Michael Bradley throughout the game, and Toronto FC not really having a response to that. I mean, they're very much not a quick team. They don't have a lot of guys who get in behind up forward or behind the opposition back line, especially when Akinola is out. And, that just allows the other team to press you high, put pressure on Gonzalez and Mavinga, and kind of pull them forward to the point where, neither of them are quick enough to recover. So if they make a bad pass, all of a sudden it's coming right back down your throat. And that's how almost every goal it seemed this tournament was scored on Toronto FC. And there's a lot of concerns there. Jeff, you look like you have a point about this right on the bat.
Well, I mean, remember that guy? His name's what is it? Liam something or other, or it starts with an F. I'm not quite sure. I mean, we don't even know what he's capable of. But the time of Michael Bradley, I love Michael Bradley. I love him to death. But the time of him deciding his own minutes is over. All right. If he gets found out in these games, we have to be brave enough to sub him out. It's as simple as that. If he's having a howler of a game, it's time to go. The central in our system, having a capable central defensive midfielder is very, 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 very important. And if the center is not holding, we have someone waiting in the wings who apparently is quality. I mean, we've seen him for about 10 seconds, but it's time to trot him out. If I Twitter today and yesterday and pretty much for the last since Sunday has Liam Fraser Twitter has been on fire. so it's again, you were talking a couple minutes ago about how important our nines are to us. Are they? Because I'm pretty sure we had a 9 ready to go on Sunday, and we played a 17-year-old winger instead and put Paz in a false 9 position. Some of this stuff is starting to sound like empty platitudes, because the proof has to be in the pudding, and what we saw on Sunday was abhorrent. I mean, it was abhorrent. Let's be honest. That's not the TFC I want to see. That's not a TFC worth my emotional investment in the team. I felt taken advantage of.
Sorry, Jeff. I'm not laughing at your heartache, but
no, it's okay, man. It's all right.
I feel that. You made like four points there, Danny, but I'll kind of just focus on 2 of them. You mentioned Liam Fraser. I know for a fact last offseason Toronto FC were looking at loaning out Liam Fraser, and obviously things did not come to fruition. And coming into this season with Michael Bradley going down, the Reds were actually really, really thankful that obviously something didn't transpire. But now
I'll tell you someone who wasn't thankful, Liam Fraser.
Yeah. Well, now we're in July, and Liam Fraser's played a total of what? I don't even know how many minutes he played in the MLS back, like 30, 20. But plus the 12 or 18 minutes he had before the tournament. He's played a total of what, a half in how many matches? We've 7 matches, and three of those or 2 of those without Michael Bradley. At what point do you have to say, okay, now's the time we need to look elsewhere to get Liam Fraser playing time, because he really is an up and coming Canadian talent, and he's going to waste here in this TFC side if he's not getting playing time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this again is part of the problem with MLS though, is within a salary cap league, again, the second one of those, again, guys like Liam Fraser are on pretty cheap salaries, right? Mm-hmm. So the second a guy like Michael Bradley goes down, you can't really replace him unless you have someone like Liam Fraser sitting in the wings. It's an issue we've seen with, well, again, they didn't really play him after the start.
Yeah, I was going to say. They literally had that issue when he played 12 minutes.
Of course. So that kind of defeats part of that. But, that's why they keep guys like that around in the depth, right? Because you just don't have enough money to have a ton of veteran options, and the second you start loaning guys out and then players get injured, then you're really screwed. So I think it's a wider issue in MLS, and it's it is bad for players' development because they need to be playing, but you have this veteran starting 11, and then you need those guys around just in case one of those veterans gets injured.
That's a fair point, but Mitch, let me pose this question to you. Who's further ahead on the depth chart, Noble Okello or Liam Fraser?
I mean, you would hope Liam Fraser, considering, what we've seen from him, what he's proven. See, this is the thing I don't understand about Greg Vanney and Liam Fraser is, everything Greg Vanney preaches about his young players and often why he doesn't play young players is because he likes players who give you a 7 out of 10 every game and not players who sometimes give you a 9 and sometimes give you a 4. Of all the young guys we've seen come through at Toronto FC, I don't think anyone's been more consistently solid than Liam Fraser. I mean, he regularly gives you, a solid performance. We haven't seen many bad performances from him. So what is it? Again, we know the positional thing. We know he wants Michael Bradley to be playing there as much as possible. But what is it about Liam that, he does everything Greg Vanney seems to like in a player? Why can't he get these minutes? Jeff, you seem to have a point on this.
Oh, I'm so mad about the 7 out of 10 thing, because you just put Paz out in a position where you're going to get a 4 out of him, and you put Piatti, who was giving you 9s all tournament, in a position where you're maybe going to get a 2.5, right? Like putting Piatti out in that formation absolutely neutered the man. He was lost out there, and Paz was playing so high that he might as well have been in Sean Johnson's net helping him out on corner kick defenses. So it's just the theme that I'm discovering today that I didn't actually plan to discover is all these empty platitudes, these Vanney quotes that sound amazing, but in practice, the opposite is actually happening.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And on that Piatti kind of instances, he played on the right wing there in a false 9 formation. And what we've seen Piatti do so well during this tournament, he's been able to link up play closely with his teammates. But in his back pocket, there's always that long ball in the middle that he can play. He can pull out. We saw it a couple times. He sent it to the far post where Richie Olea or Tsubasa Endo maybe ran onto it. They didn't have that option in the middle without a true striker. So I think that I wrote this that Pablo Piatti had an underwhelming performance against New York City FC, but I think that was just a product of them playing him in that formation without a true striker, without Pozuelo as a number 10 supporting him, as opposed to Pozuelo as that striker supporting him. So he looked lost out there. He didn't have the legs to kind of make up the ground that was required as sort of a right winger in a false 9 formation. So on that point, yeah, you're spot on there, Jeff. Is 2 out of 10 from Piatti on his final match.
Oh yeah, maybe less. I mean, we had to listen to our favorite Jack Burns on WTR, who actually made the right comment. I mean, this is a DP. We're giving him a bunch of money, and let's talk about Josie. I mean, he's collecting Mesut Ozil kind of money from us to have a protein snack on the side of the bench. Can we honestly say that his non-participation in the MLS Is Back tournament is entirely down to him being in a different city than TFC was and missing out on the training? I don't know if I believe that. I'm sorry. I don't know if I believe that. I mean, there are a lot of people that were in different places that were doing solo training, stuff like that. The math it isn't working in my head.
Yeah, I think Josie Alter is just different when it comes to TFC mentality and how they want to preserve their, designated player, obviously with all the injury concerns in the past. But it begs the question, like, is that worth it in a designated player? Are you paying a designated player to play half the games and maybe hopefully even the ones that matter? I mean, last MLS Cup final, we only saw him for like the last 30 minutes. So we can play the load management game as all that we want, but when it comes down to it, he has to be available for these crucial games, these winner go home games. And when he's not there, it obviously hurts the squad. So that's a big piece of your squad missing out in the tournament.
Yeah, it's been the same question for a while with Josie Altidore, even before he signed the most recent contract. So certainly something to look to as we go forward here. I believe Joshua Kloke will be joining us momentarily, so we'll get some of his insights into all of these things. I certainly think that maybe even with speaking on Josie and even with Oso, again, that just seems to point to me that Toronto FC are playing the long game here, and that at least the knockout games of this tournament weren't maybe as important to this club as certainly it was to the fans, because again, it really seemed like they didn't really want to risk Josie or Oso. Again, I think if this is an MLS playoff game, one or both of them are starting the match. I don't know their health situations, but it did really seem like they were playing the long game with both of these guys, and which is interesting considering we don't know what the rest of the season will look like or when the Toronto FC will play again.
Yeah, I mean, Josh is online, but like, when did we go from the team that wants to win every game to the long game chess against the Grim Reaper Ingmar Bergman TFC squad? Like, I just, I'm not interested in half truths and long games. I want my team to care about every single time they step on the pitch. Anyway, Josh is here.
Yeah, that was sort of their mentality, honestly, heading into the tournament. That's what they were speaking on. You hear Omar Gonzalez, you hear Greg Vanney, even Paz talking, and they're winners. That's what TFC is supposed to be. Gonzalez said before the game the reason why he came to Toronto FC was because of its winning culture, and it was just disappointing, obviously, leaving us in a sour taste like that. Anyways, welcome, Josh. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have you here.
What's up, guys? You get a view of my glamorous bedroom here.
Is that an unmade bed? Is that an unmade bed behind you, Josh, or what?
Yeah, when you have a toddler at home, you have to make some sacrifices.
Definitely.
The bedroom becomes the office, and there's a little peek at how the sausage is made, I guess.
Love it, Josh. Love it.
Certainly. Thanks for joining us. I guess we'll start with the question that we always seem to ask Greg Vanney to start every press conference. But I guess thoughts on Toronto FC's match, and I guess kind of what went wrong for the Reds. We've talked about this a little bit to start the show, but what are your thoughts on certainly a game that they would be disappointed in?
Well, yeah, I didn't hear what you guys kind of said earlier in the show, but to me, like, New York City followed the textbook approach in terms of how to beat a Greg Vanney side, which is just press the hell out of them. Like, we saw that from the first kick. Like, I remember saying to no one, because I was watching with no one, but I said out loud, like, wow, New York City is after this game. And that was clear right away. And the challenge was going to be, well, can they sustain that for 90 minutes? Right? They didn't even have to sustain it for a full 90 minutes. I was texting with a friend, and he said, well, I bet Greg is thinking somewhere around that 60-minute mark, New York City is going to tire, and that's probably when he's betting he's going to bring on his horses. But no, I mean, that's how you beat a team that wants to play and build out of the back, right? Is you just press the hell out of them. And TFC had no answers. To me, it felt like their subs were reactive and not proactive. I think, and again, hindsight 2020. And I asked Greg Vanney about this, and he, probably didn't love the question, but he essentially said, you're always kind of thinking about it. And yeah, of course, in hindsight, you wish you probably would have brought on those players earlier. I thought Oso in particular was the player they were missing the most, because in the middle of the park, they had nothing. They had no one to kind of connect, between Omar in the back to Pozuelo up front, right? Delgado, I thought, had a really strong tournament, but Delgado is a link man, and he's a player that needs another player, by his side. And I thought Delgado and Osorio and Delgado and Pozuelo, they look good, right? So it was clear that you were missing a player that could maintain possession, slow the game down, and play well under pressure, as Oso often does, right? He's not a player that panics with the ball. So they were missing him. And it was clear to me that this game was not going to go their way, 2 minutes in, right? But again, I heard you guys talking about it off the hop, and maybe we'll touch on this more, but if you're TFC, like you have to say we want to win every game, but this is a team that wasn't thrilled about going down to Orlando in the first place. This is a team that had their flight delayed twice. We know that they weren't super enthused about leaving the safety of Toronto for Orlando. You go down to Orlando, you get 5 points from 3 games. You're still near the top of the Eastern Conference, and you go home without, aggravating any players with injuries.
I'm pretty sure a lot of them are coming home injured. So. They're
coming home injured, but are you at Ayo Akinola? We don't know the seriousness of that, but do you have any serious injuries here? Osorio, but that doesn't seem too serious. I don't know. I don't think in the big picture, this is the worst thing at all for Toronto FC. It was embarrassing. It was an embarrassing loss, but you can't be too upset if you're Greg Vanney walking away from this.
Yeah, they might not come home with a lot of injuries, Josh, but they definitely come home with at least a little bit more concerns from the TFC fan base after that sort of performance there at the MLS Is Back tournament. What I want to ask is still on that NYCFC game. Yep. We look at that starting 11. Is that the best possible starting 11 you think Greg Vanney could have thrown out? And I'll get to the next question as you answer that.
No, I don't think so. Justin Morrow was dealing with a nagging injury. I still think he's their best left back because, again, what was missing from that New York City game was that sense of poise and that calmness that TFC generally show on the ball, and that's Justin Morrow to me. So you're missing him as your first choice left back. In the midfield, in the central midfield, this is where the biggest questions lie because you have three spots, and you have Bradley, who still looks like he's going to play every single minute for Greg Vanney. You have Delgado, you have Osorio, and to me, you have to play Pozuelo in the 10, right? So there's 3 spots there in the midfield, and they didn't have that in that game. So no, absolutely not. That's not their best midfield. I still don't know who that last winger is, right? If we have Piatti on the right and we have either Akinola, I still think Josie Altidore comes back at some point this season. I don't know. I don't know who occupies that left spot. So no, it's not their best 11. But I don't know if Greg Vanney knows who his best 11 is yet. I remember asking Greg Vanney in 2017, even in 2016, as the regular season kind of drew closer. Do you have an idea yet? Do you have an idea yet? And he's a guy that's he's always thinking, he's always tinkering. So I don't think he likes to settle on that 11 until as close to the playoffs as possible. So no, to answer the question, it definitely wasn't their best 11, but I don't think we know what that is yet.
Right, and just a little bit more specifically there, you had the likes of Tsubasa Endo, who obviously didn't end up playing, so we don't know what his status maybe was. And we had the likes of Jacob Schaffelberg on the bench, who has played at left wing, started at left wing before this season. Why in the round of 16 are you giving a 17-year-old Jayden Nelson his first MLS debut?
Probably because you want to bring something that New York City hasn't been able to plan for, right? If you're New York City and you understand what you think they're going to roll out and you've planned through video in terms of what you can bring, ultimately with Jayden Nelson, it's a high risk, high reward play, right? You're bringing him in and saying, hopefully he can provide that spark, that energy, that whatever, je ne sais quoi, that the team, clearly didn't have. Is it a lot of pressure? Yeah. I thought there were moments of brilliance from Jayden Nelson. And I thought, anybody who reads anything that I tweet about knows that I'm in favor of playing these young players. And, in a round of 16 game, people might say, well, why are you doing that? Why are you putting that kind of responsibility on them? But if you're a team that, like we said, is already happy with the 5 points you got from 3 games and everything else is gravy, you're not as concerned because you can still get that CONCACAF Champions League spot by winning the Canadian Championship. Why not roll the dice, right? He liked what he got out of Akinola. Why not see what else? I mean, he's been high on Jayden Nelson. Michael, I think it was you who asked him about it pre-tournament.
Mhm.
Like he's high, or he says at least that he's high on some of these young academy products. And they made a point of signing these players before the tournament, before the season. Like there's going to come a point where you have to roll the dice with these guys. So yes, it's a round of 16 game, but I don't want to say meaningless, but like, again, if it's about as meaningless a round of 16 game as you can get, right?
That's fair enough. Fair enough. Whenever there's something on the line, TFC fans want to win. So
Yeah, I wanted that CCL spot, man. I wanted it so badly. Damn.
I mean, I get that. I do. I get that. But you can still get that CCL spot, provided there is a Canadian Championship in some format. And if you're Toronto FC and you know, or you've learned probably before that game that, you know, the next phase of the MLS season is going to be just you playing Vancouver and Montreal over and over again for a few weeks. That's awesome. Like you have to feel good about what you can do there as well. You have to feel good about the opportunity to get points over the next, whatever it looks like, 6 games. You know, Greg Vanney is probably, I don't know, maybe I'm pumping my own tires, but he's probably sick of my questions about when he's going to play young players. Maybe he doesn't listen to me at all. That wouldn't surprise me either. But like, I think he knows, you know, and I think if he got one thing out of Florida, it's that his team is really aging and his team has trouble playing in adverse conditions, right? So maybe it is time to really look hard at these young players you have and gather as much information as you can. And again, roll the dice with them.
yeah,
Then wouldn't he have played him at the 9 a.m. games? I mean, you know, I appreciate the adverse conditions, but I think it's safe to say that TFC isn't going to play the lion's share of their games on the surface of Mercury anytime soon. So
yeah, I agree. Those 9 a.m. games are the ones that count towards the regular season.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking if I'm NYCFC, and I'm going into my dressing room, my whiteboard is all about. They started a 17-year-old and they're playing Paz's false 9 again. Let's go get these guys. Like I can't imagine anything that we could have done better to inflame them and make them chase after this game at the outset. That's just
yeah, I get that. I do. I really do. But I mean, perhaps he's out of options. You know, perhaps he doesn't see. Perhaps, you know, either Endo has a knock or he doesn't think that you know, maybe he doesn't like what he's seen from him or Schaffelberg. Like none of those guys, Endo, Schaffelberg, none of those guys really inspire a ton of confidence either. You know, they're like, it's still strange to me looking back, and this is not a knock on Subhas Endo as a player in his journey, but he was in an MLS Cup final starting 11. Like it's still surreal to me that Greg Vanney was able to get the most out of that lineup and take them to a final last year. So I think there's still some spots that, you know, he's holding auditions for. And again, in a match where you kind of, if you get the win, great. If you don't, you get to go home, and you know your veteran team gets to go back to their families. So why not see what you have in the 17-year-old? Again, like Michael, you were in on that press conference. He made a point. No one asked him about Jayden Nelson, and he made a point in, you know, a pretty I don't want to say angry manner, but a pretty forceful manner to make a point of kind of hyping up what Jayden did and highlighting the fact that no one asked about him. So he believes in the player. He does. He believes in the players. So, you know, he probably sees something that a lot of people don't. And I mean, I think it was John Herdman who said it, right? If you're good enough, you're old enough. So that's probably where his head is at.
Yeah, no, that's a good point right there. just talking about that press conference a little bit, that was probably the most animated since I've been on the beat that I've seen sort of Greg Vanney after a match. I remember you asked him a question, he responded using your name. So that's when you knew at that point, Greg Vanney was a little upset. So back to that Jayden Nelson kind of comment that he made. I feel like a lot of it, and you kind of touched this, we were asking him so much about these kids building up to the press conference for the tournament. He finally goes in and throws out Jayden Nelson, and then after the tournament, no one asked him about it. It was just a little bit of a added kind of punch in the gut for Greg Vanney after, gambling on Nelson and then no one else kind of covering that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to go far. You don't have to go that far back to 2018 to think about, animated or Greg Vanney. But yeah, I think that there's clearly some frustration on Vanney's part about the performance of the team. And from what I picked up, in terms of what he said, there's, he literally said there's some things happening that he's not going to address in the press conference that he has to kind of address with his team. And he obviously wouldn't elaborate, but that was enough to let us know that, he's frustrated at the attitude or the effort in some players. And I still think that there's a lot of, we know that this TFC team tries to project themselves as the very picture of stability, but I think that, again, I heard you guys talking about it, like what's going on with Josie Altidore? Why isn't the, we don't have the salary figures yet, but he's going to be one of the highest paid players in the league. If he's on the 18, why are they not playing or 20 or whatever, right? Like why, and we don't know. But I feel like Greg Vanney still has a lot of questions of this team and he doesn't have the answers yet.
Yeah, a lot of this has been focused on like heavy Greg Vanney. One of the stories you've sort of been covering this season, you're sort of chasing, is Greg Vanney's impending contract negotiations with the club.
Yeah.
Do you think this sort of performance affects that in any way, shape, or form?
One question I wanted to ask, and I was a little upset that we didn't get any follow-up questions in terms of these MLS press conferences leading up to games, is how much stock Vanney thinks we should even be putting into this tournament. Like how should teams, like if a team wins this tournament, whoever it is, like let's say Philadelphia win this tournament, does that make them MLS Cup favorites? Or is it just, well, they did well in this weird kind of patched together tournament? I'm of the belief that, if we look at the games that mattered, TFC were undefeated, right? So I don't think Greg Vanney will be judged on this tournament. I think if the club don't get that Canadian championship and they lose out on CONCACAF Champions League again, because then what happens is you're not, to bring it back to Josie, then you can't use Josie in Champions League, right? And then you can't use these designated players that you've paid a lot of money for in Champions League and to get that final trophy to fill that empty trophy case, right? So that's where I think things get a bit dicey for Greg Vanney, but I still can't see a scenario where they don't extend his contract. I really can't. To me, he has a vision for the club. He's so in tune with the academy. He's so in tune with this club's growth. And I don't see another, I mean, to me, you also never fire a coach unless you have what you believe to be a better coach in waiting. And I don't see who that
Atlanta United.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead. I find it funny that we're talking about, the left wing as a position of concern for Toronto FC, considering they brought in a very highly paid left winger this offseason and then decided they liked him better on the right side. What were your thoughts on Pablo Piatti and his tournament? Because I think certainly mixed reviews. He looked pretty good out there with Pozuelo and Auro, but then again, it's all about integrating with the new side.
Yeah, I thought when him and Pozuelo were clicking, that's probably up there with about as dangerous as a 1-2 attack as there is in MLS. Like they're just on another level in terms of like their synergy with the ball, how quick they can move the ball. Like the MLS doesn't have a ton of those caliber of attackers yet. And they play the kind of like, Greg Vanney as far as I understand it, he's pretty obsessed with those good La Liga teams that keep the ball on the ground and move and there's so much interplay and they play between the lines, right? Those are the kind of players that Greg Vanney wants. So those glimpses. I remember asking him about it. It's a good question, Michael. I don't remember what he said, but I'm sure it was a long, thoughtful answer. But then later on in the tournament, he just dropped off. So do we have a full kind of sample size of what Pablo Piatti is yet? No, but I thought that when he played with Pozuelo, he looked about as dangerous as they could hope he'd be, right? And I still wonder, and maybe I'm just stoking the conspiracy theory fires here, but I still wonder if there was a plan to bring in another designated player this summer, had things gone according to plan and we were back on Earth 1. I still wonder if there was a plan for the club to bring in another designated player, convert him to a TAM winger, because he's a good player. Piatti shows that he has skill, but the injury questions about him were just so strong. And he was on a 1-year deal. That one didn't feel like it was the kind of the final nail, if that makes sense. So I still wonder if he was the be all and end all, or if they had something else up their sleeve that they were just kind of waiting for,
Yeah, we knew Piatti's deal was sort of on the lower end in terms of salary-wise for a designated player. So he would be, at least for the reported figures, he would have been eligible to be bought down into a TAM contract, as Josh is saying, and TFC would be eligible to have another designated player come in this summer in the transfer window. So obviously, with everything that's changing with the pandemic and everything, I don't know if things are going to go that way. But the one thing I want to point out is that we haven't been able to see Pablo Piatti play with a true striker yet. I mean, we saw Ayo Akinola, but we haven't seen Pablo Piatti, Alejandro Pozuelo, and Jose Altidore spearhead that TFC attack yet. So I'm really looking forward to see what that looks like when Piatti and Pozuelo have that presence in the middle that can really win balls in the air and create that long ball threat.
Yeah, I mean, me too, because on paper, that should be as dangerous an attack as there is in MLS. I don't know. I don't know what Jose Altidore's season is going to look like. I've given up trying to kind of guess or hypothesize. He could play out the rest of the season. I mean, there could be his injury history is concerning, but I don't know. And it can get exhausting just thinking about it. Really.
Well, let's make Josh hypothesize more. Coming out of The Athletic, there's the report of this phased restart of the MLS season following the conclusion of the MLS Is Back Mickey Mouse Cup. What do you think of this plan for the 3 Canadian sides to round robin themselves into oblivion? Do you think it's actually going to happen? And do you think that we'll advance to whatever they're calling phase 3, which would be sort of the Bundesliga, EPL in-market games, sans fans to play out the rest of the season? I
mean, if we look at what's happening in Major League Baseball right now, doesn't inspire a ton of confidence in playing in-market games. I was having a conversation with a colleague at The Athletic, and I kind of just wondered out loud before this was reported, and I have absolutely no reason at all to doubt their reporting. And Greg all but confirmed. I asked him about it in the press conference, and he was a little nicer, but no, he essentially said that's kind of what they're planning for, is a mid-August restart. I wondered out loud why you wouldn't have a hub city format and make Toronto a hub city. Do you have the facilities that you do in Orlando? Maybe. Would there be concern about bringing in a bunch of players? Sure. But I look at what the NHL has done. No positive tests as players head into the bubble. It would require a lot more lead time than mid-August. I don't think they could have turned it around then, but why not? They'll still be barbecuing at BMO in mid-August. So right. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, that we should point out with this plan. I would be surprised if we get more than my over/under at games at BMO for this phase 2 is 1.5. It's 1.5. I think they'll get. I don't know if they'll get, because I mean the BMO field is essentially booked until September 8th. Like
don't remind me, but yeah.
Those Carolina Hurricanes, man.
Oh man, they're playing spike ball on my cis grass. Like, what the hell?
It should. In all seriousness, I was told by someone at the club that they, like, I don't know if you watched the video. Most of them were in bare feet.
Yeah.
I don't think they can wear like studded shoes. I don't think that. I wonder what. I don't think they can wear boots, and they can't use any of TFC's equipment. So you're essentially treating it as a beach in a way. But I wondered out loud, like, why not? No, why not have the 3 Canadian cities as your hub cities? You know, have all the California and Northwest teams in Vancouver. I guess you would have a lot, maybe the central teams in Toronto, and have all those Northeast teams in Montreal. I don't know. I mean, if you're Toronto FC and you play whatever 6 games maybe against Vancouver and Montreal, that'll look good on the regular season.
yeah, true enough.
I don't know. I don't know how many viewers we have out in those cities, but I wouldn't fear either of those teams. I thought Montreal looked like a mess, and I don't think Thierry Henry knows what he has right now. And I think there's just still so far to go for this Whitecaps team.
No, our viewers love that content, Josh. Keep that going. Keep that same energy going. For sure.
Yeah. Before we let you go, Josh, I did want to ask you one more question about a change in formatting, and that's the World Cup qualifying format for CONCACAF and what that means for Canada. I mean, you know, certainly they say something like 20 games for Canada to qualify for the World Cup, but again, it's a path that, while complicated, is much straighter to Qatar 2022 than certainly what happened in, as you said, World Part 1, or the first version.
Earth One.
Yeah.
Got to be a comic book nerd.
Yeah. It's a lot of games, isn't it? That was my first thought, is when are they going to play all these games? That's a lot of games to get in before 2022. You know, and a lot of travel too. So is it an easier, or is it more of a, like you said, a straight line? Yeah, sure. I think just kind of getting to that final 8 that has to be the bare minimum for this team. And I've been pretty high on their chances to qualify, if only because of, you know, the talent they have. I'm a believer that and I guess maybe that was proven wrong in this MLS Is Back tournament, but, you know, in shorter tournaments, I'm of the belief that talent is what wins out, right? Alphonso Davies should be able to win you games alone. Jonathan David should be able to win you games alone. They should have no trouble. This is the men's national team we're talking about, but the bare minimum should be getting to that group of 8 and playing meaningful games. I still think they can qualify, because I still think that we have yet to see the best of Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies. And there's other, you know, we haven't even brought up some of the other attacking talent, but those 2 players alone, I know we talk about them all the time, but I think for good reason. Like, is there a better player in CONCACAF right now than Alphonso Davies? He should be able to win you a few games. How many better, you know, goal scoring forwards are there in CONCACAF than Jonathan David right now? A few, but not a ton. And I still think those players are going to get even better. Yeah, I guess a lot depends on where you play Alphonso Davies, but we don't have 3 hours to talk about that.
I was going to say, that was going to be my follow-up. Can you win games at left back on your own? That's the $1 million question.
So, yeah, I think they should be able to get as close as possible to qualifying, right? I really do. But that final round of 8 is, to me, the bare minimum in terms of expectations.
Yeah, some good news for the national team, I think, is that Christian Gutierrez, if he decides to play for Canada, looked pretty excellent at this MLS Is Back tournament at left back. Richie Larea didn't look bad there either. So,
yeah, and Richie Larea, to me, I mean,
but
Why aren't we talking about Richie Larea for that left wing spot?
Hmm.
No, seriously, like why, like what if you get Justin Morrow back and you play Aro at right back? I mean, why don't we use Richie Larea as a winger? I was joking about it on Twitter, but like, he plays with fire. I really love seeing him play. I do. And Greg Vanney wants to bring in players that just bring that energy. I don't know.
He's got one, yeah.
He's so direct. He's just so direct, and he makes stuff happen. You know what I mean? And just at left wing, and I feel like that, like you said, Joe, that'd be something TFC would need. It's just that pace down the wing and that can attack into the box, and he's capable of putting a cross in too. So, that could be an option we can look up for. You make some good points there, Josh.
Yeah, put all the techers on the right side and just have the direct runners on the left side and see what happens.
Yeah, even from a defensive standpoint, Richie's a guy who's shown he's pretty good defensively, and Toronto has shown they maybe don't have enough defensive minds on the field at any one time. So certainly wouldn't mind having Richie there. But certainly thank you so much for joining us today, Josh. It's been great.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for ranting with us, Josh. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks again to Josh for Kloke. That was good. I think we learned a lot of, maybe inside the mind of Greg Vanney a bit more about Toronto FC and their plans going forward. And again, there was a lot unknown as well that we'll continue to debate and talk about in the coming months as we move towards whatever the next phase of MLS looks like after this tournament. Before we wrapped up here, guys, we'll make this segment a little more snappy because certainly we went a little long with Josh, and I don't think anyone minded that too much. But we were going to talk about the Reds we wish we saw more of at this tournament, and we talked about mine a lot. It was Liam Fraser, so we'll move quickly past that. Jeff, who was yours?
Mine was Patrick Mullins. I obviously for the rationale behind the last game, but I mean, we're sleeping on this guy. I saw him do a Reds rewind with Eric, and I was really impressed with how well spoken he was, how intelligent he was. The way he was breaking down plays in the game that they were watching was pretty switched on, and you can't ignore the fact the guy's a journeyman. He's had some good seasons with the Revs, with DC, and with NYCFC. I don't know why I always leave the C out of NYCFC when I say it out loud, but I feel like we're sleeping on the guy, and it incenses me that we have a capable striker. I mean, he's not a jobber, and we're not playing him when games are screaming for strikers. It just anyway. There we go.
Yeah, I've been a big Patrick Mullins fan since he arrived. He provides a great. He's big, and he also has that speed that people that size usually don't have. So he's definitely a unique asset, and I'm a little disappointed we didn't see a little bit more of him. I'm sure he is too, especially with some of the youngsters that came up and took his spot there in the lineup. I'm sure he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. The player I want to highlight, obviously, was Josie Altidore for obvious reasons. We wish we saw a lot more of him, but also I want to see Jaquil Marshall-Ruti, the 16-year-old youngest ever Toronto FC signing. I know for a fact that I know, Jeff, I know, but I know for a fact that like big European clubs, like the big ones, they were all after this kid, and he just chose to put pen to paper with Toronto FC. And I think in 2 years' time, we'll be talking about him as like the next big Toronto FC product coming out of the academy. So I was a little disappointed that we didn't even get to see 5-10 minutes of him play, because I do want to see what he can do at the senior level. So he's one to look for in the future.
Love the positivity.
Yeah. I think it was kind of funny. We went into this tournament thinking we'd see a number of young guys, and I didn't think we'd see them in the round of 16 as we did, but but yeah, I agree with both of those. I think Mullins certainly, it seemed like he should have had more of a role to play in this. We don't know what's going on with Josie, and again, I'm incredibly excited to see what Jaquil can do, because as Michael said, the names of the teams that have been linked to this guy are of the highest standards. So it's pretty clear that he's maybe the next Canadian to go out there and set the world on fire, as Alphonso Davies has done. But that brings us to the end of our show, the end of, I guess we could say, this season of Waking the Red Weekly. It's been a lot of fun. Big thank you, as always, to Kevin Kennedy and Sophia from Homestand Sports for all the work they've done in the background and foreground. The guests we've had over the past couple of weeks, Dr. Tej,
We just lose Matt.
hopping on with us today. Thanks, of course, to my co-hosts, Jeff and Michael. Really appreciate it, guys. It's been great. And as most of you guys, or thank you most to all of you for watching, interacting with us throughout the show. We've really enjoyed doing these things, and hope you guys have enjoyed listening to us as well. All of our rants, all of Jeff's thoughts on TV, the TV side of things, all of those sorts of things when he's supposed to be previewing games. I'm just kidding.
The incredible shrinking Adidas logo. It's amazing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Continues to amaze as this tournament continues. But we don't know what MLS will look like when it's back or that sort of thing. But when it does, we hope to be back with this show. And until then, both Footy Talks and Waking the Red will have plenty of content over the next couple of months to fill the gap. So enjoy the rest of the tournament, everyone, and catch you again sometime in August.
Yeah. See you on the flip, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.